Before we jump into today's episode, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel going into this offseason. We're going to cover the draft, free agency, free daily content, weekly live shows, plenty of reasons to hop aboard if you have not already. Plus, we are closing in on 32,000 strong. Coming up on today's episode, I want to run through the 10 most notable free agents for the Broncos with their season done and give some predictions as to who could be returning for next year and who might be walking in March. So let's start with running back Javonte Williams. The former second-round pick out of UNC has unfortunately not lived up to the hype. That injury in 2022, I feel like really set him back, and we're 2 years removed from it at this point, and we're not seeing much improvement whatsoever. Back-to-back seasons averaging under 4 yards a carry. This past campaign, 513 yards on the ground. That ranked dead last for all 32 teams' leading rushers, behind Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. This has to be a major focal point for the Broncos this offseason, and I envision that the plan to resurrect the run game in the running back room is going to be by bringing in some new faces and some new legs. So my prediction is Javonte Williams will not be re-signed by the Broncos. I'm guessing another team will sign him to be a roster spot in a training camp battle for their RB2, maybe their RB3 job, but I don't see a starting role awaiting him in 2025, and I don't see him coming back to the team either. Moving on to the next free agent, let's talk about defensive tackle DJ Jones, the former 49er who signed a 3-year, $30 million contract with the Broncos. That 3-year contract is up. I thought he had a pretty good bounce-back season. I know that the numbers might not indicate that, but it's never really a full story when you talk about a defensive tackle's performance and you just look at the box score numbers. I know that might sound, strange, but I really feel like there's more to the job than just tackles and tackles for loss. It's about, holding up your assignments and clogging up running lanes and allowing linebackers to do their job. So I thought Jones honestly played better in 2024 than he did in 2023. So with that being said, my prediction is he's going to re-sign on a 1-year contract. He's not going to get $10 million a season like he did a few off seasons ago, but I could see the Broncos bringing him back on a 1-year, $3, $4, $5 million-ish deal. They don't really have a ton of youth at the position that they need Jones to get out of the way for those guys to develop, which I do expect them to kind of add in the draft at that position. But while you're, coaching up and watering those young plants, not a bad idea to have a veteran come back on a cheap 1-year deal. So between these top 2 free agents incoming for the Broncos, who do you want to re-sign the most? Javonte Williams or DJ Jones? I'd go with DJ Jones, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section. On to number 3, it is linebacker Cody Barton, who came over after being a 3rd-round pick by the Seahawks, went to the Commanders, was a special teamer for a good stretch of his career. And then with the Broncos, his role just completely balloons up once Alex Singleton goes down. And I thought he had a fantastic campaign for Denver. I mean, it never looked like the Broncos defense skipped a beat after Singleton went down, and a lot of credit has to be given to Barton. He was healthy, he pretty much played every single snap, and he was effective on the field. So I could see Barton getting a 2-year deal from Denver. I don't think he's going to reset the market or anything like that. I think it could be a 2-year, $9-ish million contract, right? Somewhere in that $4 to $5 million a season range, a nice pay bump and some, longer term assurance. But if I were the Broncos, I'd want to bring him back. He showed a ton of growth and a ton of promise, and it's a position that really doesn't get a whole lot of investments made into it. So if you don't re-sign Barton, then you're probably looking to draft an inside linebacker, and you don't have a ton of we got a good amount of draft picks. Don't make it sound too bad, but you could free up your needs by bringing back Barton and not having to attack inside linebacker in April. Before we look at the other free agents on today's episode, I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players. Basketball season is heating up, and PrizePicks is the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Let me give you an example of what it looks like. Here are my selections for the big game coming up in the college world. So I'm taking the more on Will Howard at 0.5 passing yards. PrizePicks does a lot of these fun, almost handouts like this. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. On to free agent number 4. Actually, we can combine these 4 and 5 here. Jarrett Stidham and then his backup, Zach Wilson. 2 quarterbacks the Broncos brought over in the last 24-ish months. Stidham 2 off seasons ago, and then Wilson was traded for back in April. And both quarterbacks have expiring deals. Both are set to hit free agency, and I don't think the Broncos are going to bring both back. And I think a reason why is another team out there is going to take a look at one of these 2 quarterbacks. And Stidham and Wilson are going to have to do what's best for them. And if there's another opportunity out there where they can break through the glass, maybe reclaim a starting role, they're probably going to pursue that route because that's not going to be possible in Denver with the way Bo Nix played this season. So my prediction is the Broncos are going to try and keep one of these 2 quarterbacks. And I think that one could be Zach Wilson. Maybe another team feels like, hey, after a year of Sean Payton boot camp, we think you're ready to be a competitor for a starting gig again. And if that's the case, then Wilson's going to pursue that opportunity to start elsewhere. But if he doesn't get that sense on the open market that anyone has any interest in him starting for them potentially, if I were Wilson, I'd go to the place where my stock has really, gone up since I came to this team, and that's been the Broncos because people are looking at him through a different lens now that he's not under the dysfunction of the Jets, but under the nice umbrella of Sean Payton. So I think Wilson could stand to learn a lot and gain by being a backup in Denver, learning from Sean Payton for another season, and maybe his Sam Darnold arc comes a little bit down the road because for Darnold, it didn't come immediately after he left the Jets either, or left the Panthers for that case. He went and was a backup for the 49ers, so I could see Wilson backing up Nix again. And as for Stidham, I could see him ultimately deciding, I know what my future is here, and I've been a backup for a little bit longer than Zach Wilson. I don't want to be a backup for that much longer. So I'm going to take my chance somewhere else because I'm sure he was a little bummed when he lost the starting gig against Bo Nix. So I don't think he wants to run it back for being a backup for a 3rd straight season. All right, let's switch gears here and talk about 5 more free agents. Not as high-profile guys, but, if you watch the Broncos every single Sunday, you know this player. It's Ja'Quan McMillian. He is their nickel corner, who I think has done a really solid job since taking over from, remember Quan Williams? He injured his ankle 2 years ago. McMillian steps in, and it's been his job ever since. Now, first things first, he is not a traditional unrestricted free agent. Ja'Quan is an exclusive rights free agent. What does that mean in English? Any player with 2 or fewer accrued seasons, which means they played at least 6 games or were on IR for the season, and they have an expired contract, which is the case for McMillian, then the team that he was recently playing on, in this case the Broncos, can extend a qualifying, basically minimum 1-year contract based on their experience. It'd be a very cheap 1-year deal. And that's the end of the road for McMillian. He can either accept that contract offer or find a new job. Literally, you can either take the offer or stop playing in the National Football League. There is no other recourse. So 10 times out of 10, the players will sign that offer. So I fully expect the Broncos to give him an extended qualifying offer. It's a cheap 1-year deal, and it's an all-time bargain because the nickel position, I think, is so important in the modern NFL. We're seeing teams throw way more 3 wide receiver looks out there, which means you got to have a nickel on the field more times than not. And if he's on the field, there's a good chance he might be covering a tight end. And all of a sudden, a guy who's a $190, 195 pounds has to tackle a 235-pound tight end in the flat. you're going to want a good nickel corner because they're going to be asked to do that a lot. And McMillian's been an awesome corner for Denver. He's been a ball hawk player. He's made a ton of big splash plays. So I fully expect the Broncos to extend a qualifying offer. And, of course, he's going to sign it because he has no other choice other than just quit football altogether. So I expect him to come back 100% on an exclusive rights free agent deal. And unfortunately for him, that means he has to wait another offseason until he can really get paid because for how good he is and the money he's making, it ain't adding up. But there's no other recourse for him. Now, before we look at the other free agents, I feel like this is an all-time random Broncos player. So name a random Broncos player. I like to think of it like this kind of question here is if you were in charge of testing aliens to see if they're really humans because they claim to be a Broncos fan, don't say Peyton Manning because an alien could know Peyton Manning. Dig a little bit deeper than that, right? So name a random Broncos player like Cody Barton. Who'd you have? Philip Lindsay's not random enough for me. I want to dig deep here. Give me, I don't know, like Monty Ball. Oh, that's not even random enough too. So do your best down below. Let's talk about linebacker Justin Strnad, the former 5th-round draft pick for Denver. His contract is up as well. He had a good-sized role like Barton once Singleton went down, and he had some really good plays this season, 73 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, some sacks. I mean, everyone got in on the sacks department, but it was by far his best season. He graduated from being a special teamer to a prominent member on this defense, and for that reason, I think we're going to see him come back yet again. Probably a 1-year contract. I don't think there's going to be this ginormous market for him where Denver has to give him a 2 to 3 year deal. So 1-year deal. I'm sure Vance Joseph and Sean Payton would love to have him back after the season he had. So 1 year, $4 million deal. I think that could probably get it done. Let's talk about wide receiver Lil'Jordan Humphrey. First ballot Hall of Famer for a first name. And his time in Denver, I think, could be coming to a close. Ultimately, I don't think he is going to re-sign. I like him as a player for this team. He's an excellent run blocker. He had some really good plays early on. But as the season progressed, we saw Marvin Mims' stock go up. We saw Troy Franklin's stock go up. Devon Vele. Don't you think the Broncos are going to prioritize those 3 youngins over an older veteran receiver? Some other team is going to be happy to have him come over to their club. I think the Broncos are going to go, listen, it's not that you did anything wrong, but we got to make room for these emerging players that we invested in, and that's going to come at a price. So I do not expect Humphrey to come back. On to fullback Michael Burton. I think we're going to see Michael Burton come back yet again. My guess is he's going to come into training camp, and he's probably not going to make the initial 53-man roster. And then once they do some roster maneuvering, they'll put him on the practice squad, and they'll elevate him up. I mean, fullbacks are not positions where you have to worry about someone coming in and poaching your guy. But from a production standpoint this year, I felt like he did a very nice job, and we even got some good play out of him in the receiving game. So with a new running back coming in, probably a rookie, maybe Ashton Genty, I bet he'd enjoy having Michael Burton in front of him at the goal line. Last but not least, it is punter Riley Dixon. Yeah, we're going to talk about punter for 2 minutes. How about that? I do not think Dixon will be coming back for the Broncos. Denver's kind of had a quietly revolving door. Name a random Broncos player, Corliss Waitman. That's a good one. But you had Sam Martin, you had Waitman, and now Riley Dixon, and all in like a 3-year span? 3-year span. I don't think he's coming back. One, not to get nerdy on the punter side of things, I don't think Riley Dixon was all that great of a punter this past season. He had one of the lowest average yards on a punt. Now, that stat's a little bit deceiving because if you play for a really bad team, well, you probably don't get a first down. So now you're punting from your own 30-yard line where you can just kick the shit out of it. If you play on a good team, you probably drive to the 50-yard line and then you punt. And you can't really just blow it out the back because you don't want to get a touchback. So you got to play a little bit of a finesse and accuracy game. So the yards average doesn't tell the whole story, but throughout most of the season, I felt like we rarely saw a Riley Dixon celebration of pinning them inside the 5. You know what I mean? So I think the Broncos should kind of look into other options at the position. Now, of the 10 players we talked about today, who do you want the Broncos to re-sign? There's a couple other guys, but I kind of kept it on a more higher level and more notable name standpoint. So let me know who you would like to see the Broncos re-sign before free agency kicks off or in the midst of free agency.